The room went silent the moment the billionaire CEO laughed, not a nervous silence, not an awkward one, but the kind that presses down on your chest and makes every breath feel loud. A small-town mechanic stood alone at the far end of a polished boardroom, grease still under his nails, while a woman worth billions mocked him in front of her entire team. No one expected what came next. Least of all her, Vanessa Aldridge did not believe in miracles. She believed in numbers, control, and pressure. As the sharp-tongued CEO of Helix Dynamics, one of the fastest-rising tech companies in the country, she had built her reputation on breaking limits and breaking people who slowed her down. She leaned back in her leather chair at the head of the table, arms crossed, lips curled into a thin smile. Her voice cut through the room with casual cruelty. "Fix this engine," she said, gesturing toward the exposed prototype behind the mechanic, "and I'll marry you." The laughter that followed was quick and sharp. Not loud but cruel enough to sting. A few engineers exchanged smirks. One shook his head slowly, another whispered, "This should be good." To them it was entertainment, a brief distraction before the inevitable failure. On the other side of the table stood Deshaun Tillman. His gray work shirt was clean but worn thin from years of use. His jeans were faded at the knees. Steel-toe boots left faint traces of dust on the glossy floor. He did not belong in that room. This was a place of tailored suits, framed degrees, and people who spoke in theories and projections. Deshaun came from a garage in Kansas City. He had grease on his hands and patience in his bones. He did not laugh, he did not flinch. Instead, he stepped forward calmly, his voice low and steady. "Ma'am, I didn't come here for jokes. I came because someone said you had a problem no one else could solve." Something shifted. Just slightly, a few younger engineers stopped pretending to take notes. Vanessa tilted her head, studying him like a puzzle she already believed was flawed. "You're telling me," she said slowly, her tone dripping with disbelief, "that after 4 weeks of my best engineers working day and night, you're going to walk in here from a garage and fix what they couldn't?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Deshaun replied. The sunlight pouring through the glass walls of the boardroom cast long shadows across the table. Outside, the Dallas skyline stood tall and confident. Inside, tension thickened the air. Behind Deshaun, the prototype engine sat mounted on a rolling platform. Wires spilled out like veins, panels were removed, burn marks from failed tests stained the casing. This machine was supposed to change everything. It was Helix Dynamics' future, and it had failed every single time. Vanessa's voice cut through the quiet again. "All right then, Mr. Tillman, show us." Her words carried the tone of someone who already knew the ending. Around the table, engineers leaned back, waiting to watch a man embarrass himself. Deshaun did not rush. He walked to the engine, set his bag down, and opened his small toolkit. His movements were slow, careful, almost respectful. A tall senior engineer with wire rim glasses muttered loudly enough for others to hear, "This is ridiculous. He doesn't even know the specs." Deshaun looked up, calm as ever. "Engines all speak the same language, sir. Some just whisper in ways you haven't learned to hear yet." The room paused. His words were not loud. They were not arrogant. But they carried weight. For the first time, Vanessa felt something unexpected, curiosity. She pushed it down quickly. People loved to assume Vanessa Aldridge had always been powerful, that she grew up with money, opportunity, and doors already open. That was not the truth. She grew up in Mesa, Arizona, in a small house filled with overdue bills and quiet stress. Her father taught math at a public high school. Her mother worked overnight shifts at a hospital. Money was always tight. Weekends were not for vacations, but for catching up on sleep. What Vanessa had was hunger, the kind that keeps you awake at night. She fought her way into Arizona State University, studied engineering, and worked 2 jobs at the same time. While others partied, she stayed up until dawn solving problems. When her ideas were dismissed, she refined them and presented them again. She learned quickly that in rooms full of men twice her age, kindness was weakness. Sharpness was survival. Her career rose fast, respect came slower. By her mid-30s, she was not just climbing ladders, she was removing them. When she was offered the chance to lead Helix Dynamics, she took it without hesitation. The company wanted innovation. She brought obsession. Success hardened her. By 42, she was known for results and feared for her words. Investors trusted her. Employees avoided her temper. To Vanessa, it was not cruelty. It was efficiency. Feelings wasted time. That was why she had laughed when her assistant suggested bringing in a mechanic. Her engineers had the best degrees, the best training. If they could not fix the engine, no one could. Calling a garage mechanic felt like an insult to everything she had built. Still, her pride would not let her refuse. Let him fail publicly, she thought. Let everyone see the difference between real intellect and grease-stained guesswork. As she watched Deshawn work, a memory tried to surface. Her father under the hood of their old car, grease on his hands, patience in his voice. She crushed the thought instantly. Nostalgia was weakness. This was theater, and she expected a failure. Deshawn Tillman's life could not have been more different. The Tillman family garage sat on a cracked corner of Prospect Avenue in Kansas City. The sign was faded. The waiting room had 2 old chairs and a coffee machine that barely worked. But for 3 generations, that garage had kept people moving. Deshawn grew up there. His childhood memories were not toys or cartoons. They were the smell of oil and the sound of tools clanking. By 10, he could change a tire. By 16, he could rebuild an engine block. School mattered, but it was never his whole world. His real lessons came from watching his grandfather work slowly and carefully, humming old blues songs while tightening bolts. After high school, Deshawn stayed. Bills were hard. Customers did not always pay. Some weeks meant choosing between food and tools, but quitting never crossed his mind. Neighbors trusted him. When machines failed during storms, when lawn mowers broke, when generators died, Deshawn showed up. He listened. That habit changed everything. A junior Helix engineer visiting family saw Deshawn fix a car problem 3 other shops could not solve. He watched how Deshawn listened, tested, adjusted. No panic, no ego, just patience. He told his supervisor a call was made. Deshawn almost said no. Driving to Dallas overnight, sleeping at rest stops, he felt the weight of the difference between their world and his. Walking into Helix headquarters, marble floors shining like mirrors, he knew people were staring at his clothes, at his hands, but he did not shrink. Now, standing in that boardroom, he ran his fingers along the wiring harness. Vanessa folded her arms. "I'll be honest," she said. "This engine represents 4 years of work and hundreds of millions of dollars. Forgive me if I don't trust someone who changes spark plugs." "Changing spark plugs pays the bills," Deshawn replied. "But don't confuse simple work with simple thinking. Machines don't care about resumes. They care about respect." Silence fell. Vanessa smirked. "Respect. That's your secret." "Sometimes," he said, "listening helps too." A senior engineer scoffed. "He doesn't even have the schematics," Deshawn asked quietly. When was the last time anyone actually looked at the wiring instead of the simulations? No one answered. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Then she laughed and threw the line that changed everything. "Fine, fix it and I'll marry you." The room reacted instantly. Gasps, laughter, shock. Deshawn met her eyes. "Careful what you promise." Words come back around. He knelt by the engine, and the room held its breath. Deshawn knelt beside the prototype as if the room around him did not exist. The whispers continued, low and sharp. Someone laughed quietly. Someone else shook their head. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, already preparing the cutting remark she would deliver when this ended the way she expected. Deshawn pulled a flashlight from his bag and angled the beam along the wiring. He did not rush. He did not speak. He simply watched. His fingers traced the harness slowly, feeling tension, listening to the faint hum of electricity. The senior engineer scoffed again. "He's guessing." Not guessing, Deshaun said calmly, watching. That answer quieted the room just enough for people to notice how focused he was. He loosened a clamp, adjusted the wiring slightly, then tapped the housing with the back of his wrench. The sound it made was wrong, too dull. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. What now, Mr. Tillman? You going to knock on it until it confesses? Machines always talk. He replied without looking up. You just have to let them. That landed harder than expected. Even the engineers who had been mocking him leaned forward now. Deshaun removed a panel near the intake. He ran his fingers carefully across the surface, then stopped. He angled the flashlight again. There, he said quietly. One of the younger engineers stood and moved closer. What are you seeing? A fracture. Deshaun replied, pointing. Small, easy to miss, but it messes with pressure. Makes the system choke before it can settle. The engineer frowned. How did we miss that? Because you were looking for something complicated. Deshaun said, big problems like to hide behind small mistakes. The words hung in the air. Vanessa felt something tighten in her chest. She did not like this feeling, not at all. Deshaun replaced the damaged component with a spare left behind from previous attempts. Then he rerouted the wiring harness, clipping it cleanly away from the housing. Vanessa tapped her pen. Even if you're right, that doesn't explain why the software kept stalling. Deshaun stood, wiping his hands on a rag. Because the system was getting signals it couldn't understand. The wiring was fighting the sensors. The timing was off. The room went silent again. Power it up, he said. The senior engineer scoffed. We've done this 100 times. Deshaun met his eyes. Then one more won't hurt. Vanessa nodded sharply. Start it. A young engineer pressed the control pad. The engine coughed, sputtered. Vanessa's lips curled, ready. Then the sound changed. The rhythm deepened, smoothed. The vibration steadied. It's running. Someone whispered. The engine purred, strong and consistent. Gasps rippled through the room. Engineers jumped to their feet, eyes wide, scanning screens, checking readings. It's stable, one said. Voltage is balanced. Another added. Vanessa froze. Her pen stopped mid-tap. Deshaun folded his arms calmly. All it needed was someone to listen. For a moment, no one spoke. The engine's steady pulse filled the space like a heartbeat. Then voices erupted. Engineers crowded around the prototype, disbelief etched on their faces. He fixed it, someone said quietly. The senior engineer stared at the display, shame creeping into his voice. Weeks of simulations, he sees it in minutes. Deshaun did not smile. He did not celebrate. He simply watched the machine, as if confirming what he already knew. I told you, he said evenly. Degrees don't fix engines, respect does. Vanessa's confidence cracked. She had built her identity on being the smartest person in the room. Now she wasn't. How did you see it so fast? A young engineer asked. Machines don't lie. Deshaun replied. People do. People complicate things. Machines tell the truth if you're patient. Vanessa swallowed. You make it sound simple. Simple isn't easy, he said. That's the part people miss. The meeting ended, but no one rushed out. Engineers lingered, replaying what they had just witnessed. Vanessa stayed seated, staring at the engine, replaying her own words. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Tillman. He looked up. Yes, ma'am. I underestimated you. You're not the first. He said gently. The words stung. What you did today embarrassed me. She continued. The room stilled. Not because you made me look small, but because you reminded me how small I was acting. Silence followed. Deshaun nodded. Sometimes the hardest engines to fix aren't on the table. He packed his tools and walked out. Vanessa stayed behind, staring at the running machine. It wasn't just an engine anymore. It was a lesson. Deshaun moved with quiet focus as he knelt beside the prototype engine. The murmurs around the room faded into background noise. To him, it was just another machine asking for attention. He pulled a flashlight from his bag and angled the beam across the wiring. His brow furrowed slightly, not with confusion, but recognition. Too tight, he muttered. That's fighting the current. The senior engineer leaned forward, irritation clear in his voice. He doesn't even know the voltage tolerances. He's guessing. Desharton didn't look up, not guessing, watching. He loosened a clamp, rerouted a wire bundle, and tapped the housing lightly with the back of his wrench. The sound was dull, wrong. His eyes narrowed. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen. "What now, Mr. Tillman? Going to talk to it until it behaves. Machines always talk," Desharton replied calmly. "The problem is most people are too busy proving how smart they are to listen. That shut the room down." Even the younger engineers leaned forward now, curiosity replacing doubt. Desharton removed a panel near the intake manifold. He ran his fingers along the grooves slowly, then stopped. Under the light, barely visible, was a thin fracture. "There," he said, pointing, "that crack throws off the pressure, makes the system choke before it can stabilize." One engineer stood abruptly. "How did we miss that?" Desharton glanced at him. "Because you were looking for something complicated. Big problems often hide behind small mistakes." The words hit harder than he intended. He replaced the damaged part with a spare component left behind from earlier failed tests. Then he adjusted the wiring again, securing it cleanly, deliberately. His hands never rushed. Every movement had purpose. Vanessa frowned. "Even if that's true, it doesn't explain the software stalling." "The software wasn't wrong," Desharton said, standing and wiping his hands. "It was confused. The wiring was feeding it bad timing. The system didn't know what it was hearing." Silence filled the room. "Power it up," he said. The senior engineer scoffed. "We've tried this dozens of times." "Then one more won't hurt," Desharton replied. Vanessa nodded sharply. "Start it." A young engineer pressed the control pad. The engine sputtered like it always had. Vanessa's lips curved, ready. Then the sound changed, the rhythm deepened, the machine steadied. It was running, smooth, strong, alive. A gasp rippled through the room. "It's holding," someone whispered. Vanessa froze. Her pen slipped from her fingers. Desharton crossed his arms. All it needed was someone willing to listen. Engineers crowded around the diagnostics, checking readings. "Voltage is balanced, pressure is stable. This makes no sense," the senior engineer whispered, shame heavy in his voice. "Weeks of simulations." Desharton didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just stood there. "I told you," he said quietly. "Degrees don't fix engines, respect does." Vanessa stared at him, something unfamiliar tightening her chest. The engine continued running, steady and undeniable. For once she had nothing to say.